The views on this program do not reflect those of ONTV or its board of directors. Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taormina.
Welcome to OAA Now. Here I'm Sammy Taormina, blogger around the OAA, the host of Last Week Brain Cells, and host between Taormina's on Ordinary Television. I'd like to welcome those watching on the local voice on SoundCloud and those watching on Ordinary Television. Got a lot to look at this week here on the edition here of the podcast here. We're going to look at, of course, some big changes around the league here. Obviously, some of the big stories here, you think about it, is the, we got a new boys basketball coach at Pontiac, which I just found out recently. Also, a shocking departure at Rochester Adams. We're going to break all that down, and also we're going to preview the regional this week here for track and field, considering where everything stands. So, without further ado, let's look at our main story here around the league. We're going to start in girls basketball. I mean, when you look at Adams, I mean, you kind of think about what them was like, making that move, that long-term move. You kind of think about what, about where the program's been at. I thought, the big news here, of course, from Adams, Joe Malberg, no longer the coach at Adams. Of course, the application has been posted. It's on the blog at Saginaw Bay 4650 at blogspot.com. And you got to look at the record that Malberg had when he was at Adams. Obviously there was a lot of things that were just especially a lot of things that were out of his control. I mean, you really kind of think about, the 28-53 record in his 4 years with the program. The success that he's had it in the smaller schools. So you really, and then you look at this team this season, having a lot of injuries that affected this team, and and obviously where Adams has been. So you kind of think about, there were a couple of things that, just really shocked. Shocked, surprised some people here. I mean, obviously you look at the, that record, especially against Rochester and Stony Creek. And then also you kind of thought about maybe that win against Utica Eisenhower last season really turned the corner around. But, obviously the big injury to face Zolas really was the, the downward, and obviously being in the red and being in the blue. Obviously you look at Rochester was in the white this year. Stony Creek was in the red the previous year. So you really think about, the record. But then you got to look at that district first round game against Romeo where, Adams was in the first round. They took on Romeo. It was a winnable game for them. Romeo just lost their two best players to injury. And Romeo just couldn't, Adams just couldn't get the job done. So it ended up falling that 137-33. So you kind of think about, was that game the writing on the wall for Malberg? And, I can't go in the opinion of people, but you kind of think about it, you kind of think about that game was, obviously you look at some of the mistakes that were made in that game. Now I can't go into that area. I really can't go into that area, but, you kind of think about that loss, you know what I mean? And, I think that was the main reason why Malberg was let go. And, you kind of look at with Adams is, you look at the positives, what Malberg's done at Adams. You look at what he did when he took over the program for Shea Lewis. Of course, Shea Lewis, we know, is at Schoolcraft College, and we know she left that program in a really, really rough spot. And Malberg had to do was to rebuild that program. And, and I thought he did a really nice job building that program, rebuilding that program from scratch. And, It's just, I think the reason why, it didn't work out was because, obviously you look at you look at the situation Adams was in, being in the, being in the blue, trying to build the program up. I mean, like, they just haven't been, they were very inconsistent. And, and you saw in their play, I mean, like, there's been games where they just, just the inconsistencies really, they had a couple years where they were just really down. And, then they got back up and, it didn't resound in success, but you got to look at the job that Malberg's done rebuilding that program. And you look at where Adams was at before he got there. Adams had two programs, a JV and a varsity. He really built that program to three programs. He did a nice job with that. He really, turned around that culture. It just didn't translate into wins and losses. So, you really look at the positives there that he brought into Adams. Bringing a positive atmosphere, bringing like a, it just unfortunately here at Adams, it just didn't work out. And, when you look at the opportunities, obviously, with Adams, obviously you kind of think about, with Adams, you think about where they're at. I mean, like the school district, obviously, with Adams, with Stony Creek and Rochester, both in your backyard, and you look at both teams have had success, especially Stony Creek, with the way that team's been, getting the state quarterfinals 2 years ago under a first-year coach at Columbus Williams. Now, I'm not saying that pathway works, but that's where you look at the success that he did in his first year at Stony Creek, and, you kind of think about with Adams and say, like, well, like, what's going on here? What's going on here? Rochester, they had some success under a first year coach as well, taking over that program. So you kind of think about what Adams says, you know what I mean? What's going on here? I mean, are we doing something right here? I mean, like, I think that was the mindset, I think, of Adams, you know what I mean? And then, like, you look at the record, the win-loss record, you know what I mean? You're in a win-now league, and, that's not good enough, you know what I mean? So it's interesting. It's also sad for me at the same time, too, because I've had Malberg on my podcast. I've had him twice on my podcast, and, talking Adams, talking about the team. I mean, like, the injury bug that's been bothering them, just really all the adversity that team's been going through. Of course, you look at this season with the injuries, really hindering Adams, particularly injury to Faith Zolas. That was a big, big injury. Missing most of the season, and then, that disappointing first round exit against Romeo, which I kind of felt, honestly, and this is my own opinion, I kind of felt like that was the game that really, that really was the one that decided his fate, was that Romeo game. So a lot to be, you know what I mean? Like, so when you look at the direction for Adams going forward, I mean, like, now you got to think now, when you look at what Adams has got coming back, Adams does have a lot of proven talent coming back. You do return Faith Zolas. You have Jordan Jarrell, Layla Tomzak, Reagan Moore, Alyssa Stevens, Nora Kamaj, and Nadia Hepner. That's a good core to build upon. That is a solid core to build upon for whoever takes over the job there. You kind of look at program strength. I mean, Malberg's done a really nice job building program strength at Adams. He did a really good job building that program. He's done a really nice job, and he did a really nice job bringing back three programs. I mean, Malberg really took this program, and brought it back up to respectability. And I think that's clearly where you got to look at with him as a coach is, he's done a really nice job rebuilding teams. He's done a nice job, and I think he's going to get a job somewhere. And he's going to get a job somewhere. And I think honestly, if it's at a smaller school, I think he's going to do a heck of a job there. I think, I think the Adams job is a little bit too much for him, but I think for Coach Malberg personally, I think he's going to get a really good job. I think he'll get another coaching job in the future. I think he's going to you'll get another basketball coaching job in the future, and whoever hires them is going to be lucky to have him. So I think Malberg did a really nice job despite the win-loss record. But when you look at Adams, it's about wins and losses, obviously. And I think that's really the direction where that program's going to be. So now you ask yourself who is going to take over that program? I mean, now you got to consider what's going to happen with Adams. Are they going to go within, or are they going to clean house? And, when you look at teams that have been in need to complete rebuilds, you think about what Adams is. The rebuild is not easy. It's going to take years to rebuild the program. It does. You look at, of course, there's some teams that had some down years. You look at Lake Orion's had some down years. Clarkson's had some down years. You look at, Rochester, they've had some down years. You look at a team like Troy, they've had down years. You look at, a lot of these teams, when they go through rebuilds, it's not easy to go through one. And obviously, when you look at whoever takes over the job at Adams, I don't necessarily think that this is a rebuild. I think for Adams, it's just if they go in-house with their next hire, then there really doesn't need to be a transition period. If it's their JV coach and Coach Howard, now obviously Coach Howard, we know that he's been around a long while. Obviously, of course, with Coach Shea Lewis, and obviously under Malberg as the JV coach. Do they go? I think, it would be really interesting if he got the job because, obviously different mindset than Malberg. But I think it would be really interesting if he did get it. So he's one guy that I would, that I would possibly look at if I'm Adams. Another guy, to think about maybe considering is maybe Bill Durston. Obviously former Rochester coach. You look at the job he did at Rochester, he did a really nice job with that team. He built program strength. He knows how to win games. That's another one to consider. Now, but I'm not going in the box when I'm thinking about with Adams. I don't know what they're thinking. I really don't know what they're thinking. But whoever the new coach is going to have experience, which is going to help them. But the question is, you're going to have that transition period. And it has to happen during the season. Because, if you have it early on or middle part, that might be a little too late. Because you got to look at with Adams, the summer league schedule that they have. You got to look at summer ball for sure. And, it's concerning that, you look at a team like Adams who doesn't have a coach in place to get ready for the summer leagues, to get themselves ready for during summer ball. So this is going to be really interesting to see what type of direction that they go. Considering, the summer schedule, if they do a fall league before they start league play, that's going to be something to really, really keep an eye on, particularly with Adams, is whoever takes over that job is going to have to do things real quick because, with summer ball looming, with summer ball lurking, and I think that's something to really, really look at. So I don't know the direction that Adams is going to go with their hire. I just don't know what type of direction they're going to be, but whoever takes the job is going to have to do I don't know if it's a complete rebuild. I don't know if but it's going to be a transition period, and there's going to have to be one. This is going to have to happen during the season. When you look at where Adams is at, considering the division they're going to be in the blue this year with Troy Athens, Harper Woods, A&T. And then obviously you look at the those type of teams. They are. Harper. Obviously Harper Woods. We know. And then of course, you think about that division that they're going to be in, and you think about where Adams is at. Could this be a team that might have a chance at the division this year? Maybe they could. But you look at that division, and also Troy Athens are in that division, and also Ferndale's in that division as well. So, but you think about whoever takes over that job is going to have to deal with Troy. I'll tell you what, I think Troy's going to be very good next year. I really do, because considering who they got back, when you look at play like Diamond Prince, who's coming off an injury, you look at Macy Zeiter, you look at Carly Higginbottom. They got some pieces over there, Troy. Laura Guzman's done a really nice job with that program, even though last year for them was really disappointing. But I really think that Troy still got some upside when it comes to the program strength component because of that promising freshman class is going to be sophomores next year. Then you look at a team like Troy Athens. They did lose some talent last year, but they do got some really good pieces in the pipeline over there at Troy Athens. Coach Stacey Klump's done a really nice job with that program. So I think that, Athens, I think they can make a move. A&T lost a lot of talent, but we know how good Coach Shakita Coltrane's been as a coach. We know how good she's been. Harper Woods, they got a lot coming back for Coach Latoya Tate. But Harper Woods could be a team that could be in the conversation, next season, and that's a team that could really do some damage. And then you have Ferndale. Ferndale, I think, is the biggest question mark because you look at that team in the red. It was a much different team. Now you don't know who's going to be there. They're looking for a new coach. They're looking for they might not even field enough players, which, that would be really unfortunate considering, you look at the expectations that Ferndale's had, particularly last year when they ended up winning a gold, went up 3 divisions to the red, which was just mind-boggling to me. Then they had to come down to the blue. So Ferndale, it's a really interesting spot to see whoever takes the job at Ferndale. So that is something to really, really keep an eye on as we go forward, is whoever takes the job at Ferndale is going to be in for a challenge. So, and then you look at the district component for Adams. You think about this, most likely you're going to either be in a district with your city rivals in Stony Creek and Rochester, and possibly have to see either Romeo or Utica Eisenhower. Utica Eisenhower had a really nice year this year, really incredible year. And they are loaded again, of course, led by the Turner twins. Stony Creek, we know, is they have the Avash sisters. And then obviously Jalen Freeman. And then you look at Rochester. Yes, they don't have the twin tolerers anymore and Kylie Robinson, Alice Max, but they're still a team to be a reckon with. I mean, and they're well coached under Coach Andy Toppy. And then maybe Romeo under Coach Ronald Blank. He's done a really nice job. Or they could send Adams north, which means a date with Lake Orion, which that could be really interesting considering, we know the job that Coach Bob Bridges has done with Lake Orion. Maybe put them with Clarkson as well. We know how good Clarkson is under Coach Aaron Goodnow. Oxford, could they come down? You know what I mean? To this district. I mean, you don't know. I mean, MSU is going to decide that fate. But Adams, there's just a lot of options with them when it comes to the postseason districts where they're going to be at. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Adams and can Adams obviously, find the right person for the job. And they got to do it really quick because, the start of summer ball is nearby. It's looming. And, and obviously, you do have a very good returning team coming back. Of course, Faith Zola's back. You do return some key players on that team. So whoever takes over that job at Adams, you have a good team. You know what I mean? Program strength is going to be interesting to see. But what helps Adams is you have that middle school system over at Van Heusen and also at West. So we'll see what happens. Whoever takes that job at Adams, it'll be very interesting to see who takes over that job at Adams. So, so we'll see what happens. Of course, we're going to keep an eye on it here on the podcast. Obviously, with Adams now joining Ferndale on the list for wanted coaching vacancies. So it'll be interesting to see what direction that Adams goes with their hire. So we'll see what happens with them. So that's something to really, really keep an eye on as we head forward to the beginnings of summer ball. When summer ball starts in June. I mean, I know they're in AU season, and we know how AU is. So, it'll be interesting to see how Adams approaches this. So we'll see what happens there going forward. Now let's go to Pontiac. Obviously, this was a job that came out of nowhere. I did not know Daquan Washington stepped down from coaching the program, so I do apologize for not writing a column about it. Been kind of following the MHA website, when it comes to coaching searches and all that. So did not expect this. Of course, was confirmed by Stu Carrollton of the D-Zone. Deion Harris was named new head coach at Pontiac. Takes over for Daquan Washington. This is going to be Pontiac's third coach in 3 years. So when you look at this, of course, we know the pedigree that Harris brings. Played at Michigan from 2003 to 2007. Was Michigan's Mr. Basketball in 2003 at Detroit Old Redford. I know he's been around some AU teams over at Bloomfield Hills. So when I look at this move, and I think this is going to be really interesting. When you look at what Harris brings to this team, I think he's going to bring some energy to this program. I think, now Pontiac was very good this year. They were in the blue championship race. Unfortunately, they didn't win the division. Rochester ended up winning the division. But Pontiac made a run to the district, to the district final. They ended up losing to Pontiac Notre Dame Preparatory in a really tight game. They did knock off, so Pontiac, this is a program that is in a very unique spot. It is in a very unique spot to where basically this is a program to where, you look at, obviously the issue that I have with Pontiac has been the consistency when it comes to coaching. It's been a coaching carousel over there. It started, of course, when Andrew Myers left the program before the season started. Washington took over the program before the season started. I don't know what were the details over there at Pontiac with Myers stepping down. I don't know what was the issue over there, but, it happened. So, but when you look at the coach that Pontiac is getting. Here, they're getting a former point guard who played at Michigan. He was Michigan's Mr. Basketball from Detroit Redford. So that kind of tells you the coach that they're getting. And you look at a player like J.J. Claudio, starting point guard for Pontiac, and you put Harris's knowledge of the game and you install that into Claudio, that's going to make him into a better player. I think it's going to be, if you're J.J. Claudio and you're looking at this and you're saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to learn from Coach Harris. I'm going to learn what he does. Learn to be a better player. You're going to make me a better player. I can learn from his knowledge. And I think this is an opportunity for him to make some noise. I think this is a golden opportunity for Coach, for a player like J.J. Claudio to really look and learn from one of the best to ever come out of the state. So it'll be interesting to see how this approach goes. I think it'll be really interesting to see how it goes. But when you look at Claudio, program strength will be very interesting to watch at Pontiac. It'll be very interesting because you look at Pontiac and, this has been a program that's had some difficulties when it comes to program strength. So it'll be a very interesting challenge for Harris, to say, I think it's going to be interesting to say, that, can I build a program? Obviously, you have Pontiac Middle School next door. We know how good that program's been. Obviously, you look at the Pontiac Middle School this year, and I saw Pontiac Middle School a couple times, and they're very good. So don't get me wrong. They're very athletic, very talented group. And you bring in a guy like Harris into that system over there, and I think that's going to make Pontiac maybe one of the most dangerous teams to really keep an eye on heading into this upcoming winter. So, so you look at it and you think about it is, you kind of think with Harris as, is he a program builder? That is the big question. We know the success he's done in the AU levels. We know the success he's been as a player. I mean, obviously, when he played in college and in high school basketball. So, and I think this is going to be interesting to see how this goes. Considering, program strength is a big concern with Pontiac going forward is, and obviously, being a third coach in 3 years, that's not an easy thing for these players. Obviously, because you think about this with Pontiac is consistency. That is really the thing. Pontiac, we know in the past has had some times where they've really had some moments where they just haven't been able to keep a coach within the program. That's really going to be, the challenge going forward is, can Harris stay there long term? That is the big, big challenge for Pontiac going forward. Is, can Harris stay there long term? Is he the right fit for this team? And I think that's the big question we have with Pontiac is longevity, and of course developing chemistry. And I think that's going to be the challenge for Pontiac going forward. So now let's look at the division that Harris is going to be in. Of course, Pontiac goes to the blue. The blue was reorganized this year. Obviously, it's no longer a 3-team division. It's a 4-team division. So Pontiac ended up being in the blue division. They're in a division with Troy, Athens, Seaholm, Bloomfield Hills, and Royal Oak. When you look at this division, I think this division looks very winnable for Pontiac because several reasons. Because you look at the division Pontiac is in, Seaholm right now is a team that's going in their second year under a new coach. Now, I think Seaholm's going to be much more dangerous You had Troy under Coach Gary Fralick. We know the type of program he's done in the past, but I'm curious to see what type of team he has coming back. Troy Athens is coming off a district championship. They arguably returned one of their best players in Nathan Piggott. Bloomfield Hills, we know their guards are very good. When you look at Canfield, you look at Wilson. I mean, you look at they got others on that team that are really good as well. Their concern for me with Bloomfield Hills and Coach Brian Canfield is going to be is who's going to play who is going to be in that interior. I mean, that's the big question that I have for Bloomfield Hills. Obviously, they got the guards, they got the athleticism. They could be a serious player. And then Royal Oak, Aaron Smith did a really nice job with that program, getting to the district final. They had to knock off Berkeley. They ended up getting a number 1 seed in their district, which was a big, big deal for them. It's just now they're going up a division, which is going to be interesting, seeing a lot of these bigger schools. So that's going to be something to really keep an eye on if you're Royal Oak. I mean, like, obviously, it'll be really interesting to see how this goes. So when you look at Pontiac and in this division, you kind of think about, you got Seaholm, Bloomfield Hills, and Troy Athens. I mean, where do they fit in all this? To me, I think right now, Pontiac, on paper, sits as probably the 4th best team in this division behind Bloomfield Hills, Seaholm, and Troy Athens. I just think when I look at Seaholm, obviously second year, a new system. Obviously you're starting to see signs over there at Seaholm that they are really starting to get things back together. I think they're going to make some noise this year. I really do. Troy Athens, we know, fresh up the district championship. We know how good, we know how good that program's been. And then obviously you look at Bloomfield Hills. I mean, Bloomfield Hills has got the guards. They got the athleticism. So that'll be really interesting to keep an eye on. Could Pontiac be a sleeper in the division? Absolutely they can. So we'll see what happens in the division for Pontiac. And I think that's something to really, really keep an eye on with them. And especially for the challenge that Harris is going to have with this new team, because there has to be a transition period. And then unfortunately for them, it has to happen during the season, because if it happens, and obviously, summer camp, summer league, obviously, you're going to have to really look at things for them. And I think, summer league's going to be the key, I think, for Pontiac to make sure that his new team are on the same page. So we'll see what happens there. And then the district. I mean, obviously, you look at Pontiac during Division II for the district. Most likely going to have to see Pontiac Notre Dame Prep. Obviously, because of the location where they're at. Pretty close by. Of course, Notre Dame Prep's off Giddings Road. Pontiac, we know, is off of, we know they're off of, 24, Lapeer Road. And, when they get into the heart of downtown Pontiac, you possibly might have to see Madison Heights Lampier. Maybe Birmingham Detroit Country Days, another team that they could see. Macomb Ludor North's another one they might have to see. Bloomfield Hills Cranbrook Kingswood is another team they might have to see. So when you look at Division II, it's going to be interesting to see how Pontiac approaches this and how they handle this. When it comes to districts. Now, districts will not be released until June, which we don't know their district as of yet. But it would be something, to see if Pontiac were to have a district with, if they go north or if they go south. If they go north, they could maybe entertain, maybe going north, maybe. But right now, I'm looking at that district right now, I still think it's going to be almost the same as last year for Pontiac, and I think that's going to be something to really keep an eye on. So when I look at the move for Harris, I think it's a really good move for Harris to come into the league. Obviously, the OAA is one of the toughest leagues in the state of Michigan. Um, when you look at the teams in this division are and in this entire league are really quality. You know what I mean? So you look at the division, as I mentioned earlier, Troy, Athens, Bloomfield Hills, Seaholm, and Royal Oak. I mean, those are not easy teams. I mean, those are all well-established programs. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this approach goes for Coach Harris taking over that program. So it'll be something to watch. I mean, like obviously, you look at the other jobs around the area. You look at Berkeley, you look at A&T, and Stony Creek. Those are three jobs. They're still looking for new coaches. I know. I know we'll have something within the next few days to think about when it comes to all three of their coaching vacancies. So it'll be something to really, really watch for as we go forward in time when it comes to the coaching searches over at those three respective schools. So it'll be interesting to see how this approach will be for all three. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we're gonna see what happens, and we'll go from there. So I think it'll be interesting to see where Pontiac is, but I think Pontiac could be a very interesting team to really keep an eye on as we go forward. Let's go to let's preview some matchups here, and of course we'll start with girls soccer. Of course, they came out with their matchups. District 6, this is over at Oxford. You got Oxford taking on Davison. That winner's taking on Lake Orion, Clarkson, Grand Blanc, and Lapeer versus Flushing. This district here could be really interesting because you think about this district. Lake Orion right now is the team that stands out in this, but Grand Blanc could be a dangerous team. Whoever wins Davison, Oxford is really dangerous for Lake Orion, especially if it's Oxford being at home. Davison, we know about that game last year at Davison in the district final where Lake Orion won that one. But I think when you look at that district, Lake Orion's a favorite in that district, based on experience, based on and I think experience will matter here. I think if there's a team that's on upset alert, I'd say Grand Blanc's on upset alert because of Clarkston. Yes, Clarkston's got more losses, but it's still Clarkson. So, so it'll be interesting to see how this one goes. But I think, in that district, I got to give the edge to Lake Orion the way that team's been. So we'll see what happens there. District 7 at Heartland, we got West Bloomfield versus Bloomfield Hills. Walled Lake Central versus Waterford Mott. On the other side, you got Milford versus Walled Lake Northern. And then Lakeland versus Heartland. If that district final is not Bloomfield Hills versus Heartland, something's wrong. Because we know how good both teams are. Bloomfield Hills is undefeated this year. Heartland, we know, is very good. They've been well coached. I know they just got a new turf field recently. Walled Lake Northern's their wild card. But I really think Heartland's going to win this one because of the being at home. Now, Bloomfield Hills, it wouldn't surprise me if they do move on to the next round. Bloomfield Hills does have some experience as well, so they are well coached as well. So Bloomfield Hills, it wouldn't surprise me if neither one of these two teams, you know what I mean, doesn't get by into the regional round. So we'll see how that one goes. District 8 at Farmington, we got Novi versus North Farmington. That winner's taking on Northville. Farmington versus South Lyon East, and then South Lyon taking on Livonia Stevenson. Livonia Stevenson I thought got the best draw here because South Lyon East at times they can be very vulnerable. North Farmington's got a really tough draw. Most likely, whoever sees the winner, Novi Northville, or Novi North Farmington can play Northville. Northville's a very good team. We know how good they are. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how that one goes. I think Northville is still the favorite to win that one. They're state ranked for a reason. If there's a team that's on upset alert, I pretty much would have to say North Farmington, considering that, Novi is there. let's say if Novi beats North Farmington and they somehow upset Northville, and that wouldn't surprise me as an upset because we know how that rivalry is between Novi and Northville. I call it the inter-county rivalry there. Of course, Northville's in Wayne County, and Novi's in Oakland County. They're only separated by 8 mile, and they call it the Battle for 8 Mile for a reason. So, so that would be really interesting to see if obviously Novi and Northville are your two most dangerous teams in there, but Livonia's team is your wild card. So we'll see how this one goes. District 13 is at Hurley. Renaissance taking on Groves. That one is taking on Berkeley. Ferndale versus Seaholm. And then A&T versus Royal Oak. Groves and Berkeley could be a really interesting matchup, considering Groves knocked out Berkeley 2-0 earlier in the year. So that could be really interesting. I think that could be really interesting. I think Seaholm's got a great chance to win this district because experience matters. I really like where Seaholm's at. I think they're a dangerous team. I think Seaholm, they could go and beat Berkeley, upset Berkeley. Berkeley hasn't been playing really good soccer as of late. So that could be something to really keep an eye on there. And it wouldn't surprise me if Berkeley is on upset alert, considering with Groves. Even though it's at Hurley, I just think that, but I just think Seaholm's got the better luck of the draw, even though Royal Oak's a tough team. But I just think that Seaholm, with the confidence they have, they knocked off Lake Orion on the road, played in the red. They've, played against some teams in the red. So I think it'll be very interesting to see. But Seaholm right now, they're a team that's clicking on all cylinders right now. District 14 at Troy Athens. Fraser versus Warren Cousino. That one is taking on Troy Athens. Warren Mott versus Troy. And Sterling Heights versus Sterling Heights Stevenson. If this is not Troy Athens, I don't know what is. So I think it's going to be where I think it's going to be. I don't see Sterling Heights Stevenson beating Troy. I'd be shocked if that happened. So I think this is looking at Troy Athens district final. I got to go with Athens here in this one because of the they have that win against Troy. Actually, Troy beat Athens earlier in the. Actually, no, Athens did beat Troy. So, being at home, who knows? Troy could return the favor. Who knows? See how that one goes. District 15 at Adams. You got Stony Creek versus Utica Eisenhower. That's gonna be an interesting one because Ike beat Stony 2-0 earlier in the year at Stony. That winner's taking on Rochester, and then Adams versus Ford. Utica Romeo. Man, this has got to be the year for Rochester. Seriously. You look at the bad luck that team's been through. I mean, they've seen their city rivals win state championships. They've been so close. So close. They haven't been able to get the job done. I mean, this has to be the year for them. Because if this is not the year, I don't know what is for Rochester. This has to be the year. I mean, Adams most likely going to be playing Romeo in the next round. I think Adams will win that one. And then you're looking at maybe Rochester Adams. Utica Eisenhower could upset Rochester. They could do it. And for Rochester, there's so much pressure on this team. So much pressure. Because if this team can't get it done, I don't know what can. I don't know what team will. Because there's so much pressure over there. There has to be. Especially seeing your city rivals win a state championship. You've seen Adams win one, Stony Creek win one. I mean, seriously. Seriously. That's going to be the challenge that awaits. So, we'll see how this goes. District 27 at Orchard Lake St. Mary's. We got Saginaw taking on Holly. Waterford Kettering versus Lake Fenton. On the other side, you got Avondale versus Fenton and Linden versus Orchard Lake St. Mary's. This one could go either way. I really like where Holly's at. I think Holly's a team that could make some noise. Won the Flint Metro League title. Orchard Lake St. Mary's plays in the top Catholic League. Kettering and Holly should be really interesting. Holly Lake Fenton battle in the Metro. I mean, Orchard Lake, St. Mary, and Linden will be interesting. I mean, anything can happen in this one. This is virtually a pick'em district. Virtually is. So we'll see how that one goes. District 29 at Grosse Pointe North. Hamtramck versus Warrenwoods Tower. Grosse Pointe North versus St. Clair Shores Lakeshore. Harper Woods, Madison Heights, Lampier, Warren Fitzgerald Centerline. Harper was being for a tough one. Enough said. Give me Warrenwoods Tower. District 30 at Bloomfield, Cranbrook, Kingswood, Wall Lake Western versus Cranbrook, Kingswood. That one is taking on Birmingham, Marion. Oak Park versus Farm Hills Mercy. And Redford Thurston versus Garden City. Garden City's a dark horse. I just don't. And Farm Hills Mercy's good, but I don't think anybody's touching Farm Hills Mercy. Oak Park's going to have it really tough. They're going to have it tough. So, we'll see how that goes. We're going to see how that one goes. Now let's go to track regionals. Track regionals this weekend on Friday, Saturday. We're going to start Region 8 at Rochester. You got Oak Park coming off a league championship, both boys and girls, winning the blue gold meet. Rochester coming off the red-white title and girls. Adams, Stony Creek, Avondale, Berkeley, Grove, Seaholm, Royal Oak, Bloomfield Hills, A&T. Troy, Detroit Renaissance, UD Jesuit, and Birmingham Brother Rice, and the boys only. Boys, you got Oak Park, Groves, Brother Rice, UD Jesuit. Troy's your sleeper in that one. It's hard not to go against Oak Park here, especially the way that they've been. I think Oak Park will get it done, but I think Troy will give them a meet. Honestly, Rochester could as well. Adams could as well. I mean, those are two teams that could be really scary. But Oak Park, we know how good they are in the boys. It'll be interesting to see how that one goes. Girls, this could come down to Oak Park, Rochester, because Rochester has got balance. If Ellie Mendoza does well on the throws, if Rochester's distance does well, they could give Oak Park a run for their money. I mean, I know how good Giles' teams have been. I know how good they've been. But I really feel like being at home for Rochester, home track, really nobody in the field I don't see maybe touching him. Maybe Troy could touch him. But I think it's going to be Oak Park versus, I think it's Oak Park, Rochester. Adams is your wild card. So that's going to be interesting to see how this one goes. But I've got to go Oak Park, wing this regional. But I think Rochester's going to keep it really tight. It would not surprise me if Rochester does beat Oak Park. It really wouldn't surprise me. But in the end, I just think Oak Park's mid-distance and sprints relays, I think are going to be the difference in that one. So we'll see how that one goes. Region 9 at Milford. You got Clarkson, Lake Orion, Oxford, Farmington, North Farmington, West Bluefield, along with Milford, Novi, Detroit Catholic Central, Holly, Lapeer, Wall Lake Central, Wall Lake Northern, Wall Lake Western, Waterford Kettering, Waterford Mott, Lakeland, and Farm Hills Mercy. Girls, this could be fun in the girls. Lake Orion won the regional last year. Came out of nowhere. Let's talk to my co-host Ian Locke about this. Came out of nowhere. And they were second in the red-white meet. Wall Lake Central won the Lakes Valley Conference title. And they are a scary group. Real scary group. Milford's the wild card. Home track. Home track. Farm Hills Mercy, Catholic League Power. Hotley's coming off a Metro League title. I really like Lake Orion in this regional on the girls' side. I really like where they're at. Andrew McDonald's done a really nice job with that program. He's done a really nice job since taking over for legendary coach Dan Ford. He's done a really nice job, especially with the girls' program that they've got in the right direction there. Boys' side, you got Wall Lake Central. They're the early favorite. West Bloomfield could give them some trouble. Clarkson could definitely give them trouble because of their balance. I think Clarkson will give them problems. I think that it's going to come down to is can Wall Lake Central's throwers do the job and can they do it on a consistent basis? Because I think Clarkson's more balanced than Walled Lake Central, and I think Clarkson can beat them. So I'm going to take Clarkson in the boys' side over Walled Lake Central. I think it's going to be tight. I think West Bloomfield's going to be in there. I think it's going to be really tight, but I really think that that Clarkson with their balance is going to be the difference in that one. So we'll see how that one goes. Region 10 at Romeo. Troy Athens in this one. They're with Romeo, Chippewa Valley, Fraser, Macomb, L'Anse Cruz, Macomb, Dakota, New Boston, Rankin Bay, Port Huron Northern, Sterling Heights, Stevenson, Utica, Eisenhower, and Utica Ford 2. Girls, you got to go. You got Macomb, Dakota, Troy Athens, or Romeo. Those are your 3 picks. Because you think about that, those 3 teams. Dakota, obviously, with the balance and the depth. Romeo's got one of the most deadliest relays in the entire state. Troy Athens, we know, is always solid. So, when I look at this meet, I really think, obviously, you think about this one, it can go either way. I think it's a 3-team regional. I just think at the end of the day, I like Macomb, Dakota because of their balance. But I think Romeo will compete, and I think Troy Athens will compete. It's going to come down to is one of those 2 teams, one of these 3 teams is going to have to make some noise. And I think it's going to be one of those 3 teams. On the boys' side, you got Chippewa Valley at the sprints. Macomb, Dakota has the balance. Troy Athens, we know, has got the distance. So when I look at this one here, it's anyone's meet to take. Anyone's meet to take. I mean, Romeo, we know they got the field events. We know they got some sprinting. We got some distance. I might be crazy on a limb here. I might take Romeo in this one. I might take Romeo to win it because of what they got back. I think they're going to make some noise. I really think they're going to seriously make some noise. So we'll see what happens there. Region 18, this is at Birmingham, Marion. Ferndale University, Harper Woods are in this one. They're going to be at Oakland on Oakland's main track. You're going to have Birmingham Marion there. Centerline, Detroit Country Day, Detroit Denby Tech, Detroit Henry Ford, East Point, Chandler Park, Hazel Park, Mass Heights, Lampier, St. Clair Shores, South Lake, St. Clair Shores, Lakeshore, Warren Fitzgerald, Warren Lincoln, and Warren Regina. I just don't see how anybody's touching Detroit Country Day in this. I just don't see how anybody's touching. I mean, on the girls' side, they're loaded with proven experience. Ferndale, Mass Heights, Lampier, they could challenge. But overall, I just think the balance will be too much. I think too much balance for Birmingham Detroit Country Day. They're going to win this one. They should win this one. Boys' side, Ferndale's got a lot of experience. They could challenge, but they don't have the balance. Whereas Detroit Country Day does. I just don't see how anybody's touching Yellow Jackets in this regional. I think the Yellow Jackets win this one pretty convincingly. So I really think the Yellow Jackets have got this regional projected wrapped up. So we'll see how that one goes there. Region 19, this is at North Branch. Pontiac's in this one. You got Pontiac there with North Branch, Armada, Bloomfield Hills, Cranbrook, Kingswood, Croswell, Lexington, Goodrich, Imlay City, Macomb, Luther North, Marysville, Orchard Lake, St. Mary's, Brandon, Pontiac, Notre Dame Prep, Richmond, St. Clair, and Yale. So when I look at this one, wide open regional. I mean, Yale, North Branch, Goodrich, Marysville, Cranbrook, Kingswood, all those teams can score bigs. They're going to score. They could score big points. They could really score big points. It's wide open. It's wide open meet. Anyone's to take. If I had to say something to the girls, I would pick Goodrich to win this one because of the experience. I think Goodrich will win this one in the girls. But Orchard Lake St. Mary's, they could contend in this. Marysville could be a contender. Yale could be a contender. North Branch could be a contender. I mean, it's anyone's meet. It's anyone's regional. I mean, everything's pretty much stacked up pretty tightly. Boys side, this is going to be an interesting regional. I mean, Orchard Lake St. Mary's is still favored. Yale, Goodrich, have strong saves. Maryville's North Branch. They're both wild cards. Anyone's regional take. So I'm going to take St. Mary's in this one. I think playing in a tough Catholic league, more experience. We'll see what happens going forward. But I really like the Eaglets to win that one going forward there. Let's look at lacrosse regionals. We'll start with the girls first. Region 2 at Brighton, we got Detroit Cats, Tech, Ann Arbor, Huron. That winner's taking on South Lion. Plymouth taking on Plymouth Cat, and that winner's taking on Salem. Northville versus Livonia United. That winner's taking on Brighton. Farmington United taking on Pioneer, and Novi versus Walled Lake United. I don't see anyone touch Brighton. I think Brighton will win this one. Pretty convincingly. I think Brighton will win that one. Region 3 at West Bloomfield. Bloomfield Hills versus Grosse Pointe North. That winner's taking on Grosse Pointe South. Ike taking on Chippewa Valley, Shasta Dakota. That winner's taking on Utica Ford. Troy takes on M1, and that winner's taking on Birmingham. Rochester takes on Cranbrook Kingswood, and Troy Athens West Bloomfield. This could be Bloomfield Hills versus Birmingham again. I mean, Cranbrook Kingswood could challenge. I mean, they went up to D1 this year. They could challenge. So, we'll see. But this is still looking at Bloomfield Hills versus Birmingham. I do like Bloomfield Hills coming out of this one. I really do. Region 4 at Heartland. You got Clarkston versus Grand Blanc. That winner's taking on Lake Orion. Oxford Fenton. That winner's taking on Waterford United. Lansing Catholic versus Howell. That winner's taking on Holt. Then Heartland versus Davison. Midland United versus Huron Valley. This has got Heartland's the favorite in this one, obviously, the home field. Lake Orion and Grand Blanc could be challengers. Oxford's a sleeper. I really think Heartland will win this regional. I think they'll win it over Lake Orion. I think that'll be something really, I think Lake Orion gets the regional final, but I just think at the end of the day, it's going to be, I just think that too much Heartland in that one. Region 7 at Stony Creek. Notre Dame Prep takes on Holly/Brandon. That one's taking on Country Day. Stony Creek and Lapeer are going to meet in the second round. Then you have Mount Clemens, Sacred Heart Academy, Massachusetts, Bishop Foley, a lot of our Lady Lakes, all one team taking on Warren Regina. That winner's taking on Adams. Then you have Birmingham versus Avondale. That winner's taking on Grosse Pointe University Liggett. Anybody's pick here. I really like Liggett in this one. I think they're going to make some noise here. Stony Creek's a wild card. Troy Country Day's solid. Notre Dame Prep's solid. Should be a fun regional. Anybody can win that regional. So we'll see how that one goes in that one. In the boys regional, for lacrosse, we got Region 3 at Clarkson, Heartland versus Branch/Holly. Oxford taking on Bay City Central /Frankenmuth/Freeland. Clarkson Davison. Grand Blanc versus Shorts Creek/Flushing. This has got Clarkson versus Heartland all over it. I'm going to go Clarkson in this one over Heartland. I think Clarkson's going to stun Heartland here. I like where they're at right now. I think it'll be very interesting to see how this one goes. Then we have Birmingham Brother Rice versus Troy Athens/Avondale. And Utica Eisenhower versus Waterford United. Then on the other side, I got Romeo Rochester, Adams versus Troy. Nobody's touching Brother Rice in this one. Nobody is. Maybe nobody's touching Birmingham Brother Rice. Region 5 at Lake Orion, New Baltimore versus Chippewa Valley. Then we're taking on Lake Orion. Macomb Dakota versus St. Clair /Marine City Marysville. Macomb Louisville North versus Port Huron Unified. Lake Orion, Dakota, it's looking like what's going to be in the district final. I think Lake Orion does win this one, despite the struggles they've had all year long. Then we have Region 6 at Seaholm, Birmingham United versus Farmington United, Bloomfield Hills versus West Bloomfield. That could be a really interesting matchup if it's Birmingham versus Bloomfield in the regional semis. Livonia, Stevenson, Detroit, Cass Tech, and M1 versus Brownstown, Woodhaven. This could be really interesting. See how this one goes. I think this is wide open. I think that I think M1 has a chance to get to the regional final, but I just think Birmingham United. I'm gonna take Birmingham United in this one over M1 here, so I'm gonna take that in that one. Region 14 at Stony Creek, we have Detroit Country Day versus Mass Heights Bishop Foley /Macomb North Clawson. Notre Dame Prep versus Stony Creek. Cranbrook King versus Macomb Last Cruise. And Orchard Lakes and Marys versus the conglomerate of Royal Oak Shrine, Waterford Our Lady Lakes, Lulu Northwest, and Clarkson Everett. So in this one here, I'm going to take Detroit Country Day. I think, you know what I mean, I like Detroit Country Day here to win this regional. They're going to be too much at Stony Creek, so we'll see what happens going forward in that one. So that's the lacrosse regional matchups. It's also the track regionals this weekend, so we'll see what happens going forward. All right, I'm going to sign off here. Make sure you follow the blog at SaturdayBay46at blogspot.com. Release updates around the OAA. Take care, God bless, and I'll see you all next week. All right, take care and God bless all. See you then.